This is the new Mobapad M6 HD Joycon, and I wanted to talk about it for a bit and give it a quick review for gyro controls on PC and show some gameplay. So you can see it's mostly in Chinese right now. You can pretty much just get it from Mobapad or AliExpress, but I'm sure soon enough it'll be on Amazon. When you open it up, in this box here is your extra face plates, because it's kind of Mobapad's whole thing to have swappable face plates. It's also got a D-pad you could swap out if you don't like this disc thing. Now, just so people realize, under this is where your manual is, and it's really nice because I've gotten Chinese Joy-Con before and the manuals were really poorly translated, but this one is actually pretty good. It tells you exactly what you need to know. What it doesn't come with is one of these middle piece connectors that most other third-party Joy-Con come with, in case you want to connect these Joy-Con to make it like one controller. I don't really see why you'd buy this set of Joy-Con. If you're looking to do that for gyro and PC, you're better off just getting like a DualSense or something like that. So here's the controllers. The other thing it doesn't come with is these slide rail covers for the wrist strap. Third-party Joy-Con don't usually come with these, but it's just worth knowing. You don't really need them unless you're planning on using the SL and SR buttons a lot, because it makes that a little bit easier, but just so you know, it doesn't come with those either. Okay, so let's go over some of the features of these. So they do have gyro, both sides. They connect just fine to the PC through Bluetooth. I use an Asus BT400 Bluetooth adapter, and the connection has been great and stable. They're mappable in all of the big three gyro remappers. That Steam, Rewased, and DualShock mapper works great in all of them. I tested the gyro at 250 Hz response rate, which is normal for Joy-Con. I know that some remappers can interpolate that higher, like Rewatch can go up to 500 in a high performance mode, and I think Steam can as well. So that brings me to talk about the overall gyro quality of these Joy-Con. Now, I do not have any gyro lag issues with these at all, like some third-party Joy-Con I've had in the past. These feel perfectly snappy and responsive, but I do have issues with gyro drifting on these, pretty much more than any other Joy-Con I've ever used, or gyro controller in general. These just are very drifty, and they have to be calibrated far more frequently than anything else. So you're going to have to, no matter what software you use, you're going to have to frequently do calibration to get rid of the drift. And don't get me wrong, when everything is working and it's all silky smooth, this thing feels really good. Like you could see in the footage, there's nothing wrong with it. It reacts like a normal gyro would. It's smooth, it's responsive, it's consistent. But when that drift starts, you have to deal with it, and it just starts more frequently than, like I said, any other Joy-Con that I use. So it is something that's a real downside of these. I'm not sure why it has these issues, and it's very strange because everything else about these is so like high quality and well built. But that's just how it is right now. Hopefully they fix it in the future with a firmware update or something, or maybe a revision. But for now, that's just how these are, and keep that in mind if you're looking at these. So these analog sticks are Hall effect thumbsticks, so they're going to last longer, they're going to have more durability, which is nice. And what I think the killer feature of these is these face buttons are mechanical micro switch buttons, which means they feel more like a mouse click when you press them in, rather than a normal controller button. And if you use gyro ratcheting like I do, these buttons are really great for that. If you don't know what gyro ratcheting is, it basically means using a button to kind of drag your viewport around and then releasing it to recenter your wrist. And in that case, these buttons are top tier because they really give you that tactile feel. So really good for gyro ratcheting. They also have mappable buttons on the back, and these are nice because they are capable of macro sequences and just simple one-to-one button remaps, which is what I use them for. So some third-party Joy-Con I've used that are capable of macros, when you do a single button remap, they will add lag to it because it's always waiting for a sequence. These don't do that. These perform exactly as they should, where if you do a single button remap, there's no lag. It behaves exactly like that native button would. You could spam it, you could press it over and over, there's never going to be any lag. Unfortunately, they do not allow you to map the screenshot and home buttons, which is a very weird omission because they allow, all the other buttons for this side to be onto this side's mappable back button and this side to be onto this side's back button, but they don't allow the home and screenshot button, which is, a bummer for those of us using it on PC, because those are buttons that you'd really want to use since they're so far from where your thumb is naturally going to be, that you'd want to put things there and then map those to the back button so that you can use them. They also don't allow you to do SL and SR to the back button, which I kind of expected because I've yet to find a Joy-Con that allows that. So that's normal, I guess, but it is a bummer about the home and screenshot button. So these are the swappable faceplates that it comes with. And this is actually really good if you're using these on PC, because if you're using it on PC for gyro, you're most likely turning your analog stick into just WASD. And in that case, this octagonal gate works better for WASD because it gives you just more distinct directions rather than this circular one. And they also give you this cross D-pad if you want to swap it out for this disc shaped one, which is nice. So these are the M6 HD version of these. And these have NFC for Amiibo and HD Rumble, both of which are pretty much useless to us using it on PC. But there is a cheaper option than these called the M6S. They're about 30 bucks cheaper. And those do not have HD Rumble, and the micro switches for the face buttons, from what I understand, are like a cheaper off-brand version rather than the Omrons that are in the HD. So that might be worth looking into if you're looking for a cheaper option than these. But I cannot vouch for them because I haven't used them yet. I haven't tried them, so I can't tell you if they work on PC or if the gyro is good or what. But it's worth looking into if you're looking for a cheaper version. So now I'm going to do some comparisons between the new Mobapad M6 HD and the classic Binbok third-party Joycon design. This design has been shared by a bunch of different brands over the past couple years. Binbok, Doyoky, NYXI, X-Power, NYXI, Moment, NYXI, Lenovo. It's used internationally by a bunch of different companies, so I think it's worth taking a look at how they differ just because this design has been so prolific the past couple years. So you can see that the Binbok is a little wider, but it's not really, like, doesn't stick out more as far as depth goes. They're pretty much the same. The analog stick on the Mobapad is a little bit smaller diameter than the one on the Binbok, but the real difference is the fact that it just feels way better. It feels higher quality. It's smoother when you move it around. It has more resistance when you press it around. So I think the analog stick is just higher quality in the Mobapad. It's like undeniable when you move it around. As far as weight goes, the Mobapad is a little bit heavier at 80 grams compared to the 70 grams of the Binbok and the Binbok style Joycon. And for reference, official Joycon are at about 50 grams, so more difference between these two, but not so much between these. And when you look at the other side, I already talked about how the Mobapad has mechanical face buttons, which are really good, but they're also a lot more flush with the housing of the controller. They're a lot shorter, so they have a shorter throw when you actually press them. The face buttons on the Binbok style Joycon are just normal membrane buttons, so they have that kind of classic mushiness, and then they just pop in and then they pop out. So they don't feel bad, they're just normal face buttons. So I do prefer the Mobapad face buttons by a lot. They're a little bit smaller in diameter too, but not enough to really make a difference. As far as the shoulder buttons goes, I did see a review that said the shoulder buttons on the Mobapad felt a little bit mushy, and I sadly have to agree with that, because for some reason they added a travel time to the shoulder buttons on the Mobapad, and I don't really see why you do that, because Switch Joy-Con do not have analog triggers. They just have digital buttons for shoulder buttons. So you can really feel that they added a travel time, especially on the front shoulder button, to just, like, it just travels a little bit before it actually clicks in. And the rear shoulder button, you can see it has this kind of lever action, and it takes a little bit before it goes in and actually clicks. And when you compare that to the Binbok, it just has normal membrane buttons that just pop in and out with an immediacy, and that's exactly what you want, especially if you're using these for PC gyro. You're probably using your shoulder buttons for, like, you know, a trigger or a mouse click. You want it to be as fast as possible. So I definitely prefer the shoulder buttons on the classic Binbok design compared to the new Mobapad. I really don't like the decision to put a travel time on these, and I do think they feel a little bit mushy. It's definitely a downside of these. And as far as the mappable back button goes, the back button on the Mobapad, it isn't positioned terribly, like, it's okay, but I think it could be a little bit, like, lower to where your hand naturally rests. It's not a disaster like the NYXI Wizard was, where the button was, like, nowhere where your finger is ever going to rest naturally, but it could be better. I think the position of the OG Binbox is better for where your hand naturally rests. I mean, it probably just depends on how big your hand is. I also have the Doyoky Lumos here, and the NYXI Hyperion. The Hyperions don't actually work on PC, by the way, but it's just worth looking at because it's a more modern version of the Binbok style shell. And so these ones, again, have a way more natural position for where your finger is going to rest, and also a way better button shape for that. So I think these are actually the best, you know, rear buttons on Joy-Con out there. But the main reason I don't like using the Mobapad rear button is just because the force it takes to press in is just way more than it should. It's not hard by any means, but it's just more than it should take, and it actually, like, moves the controller when you do it. So if you're actually, like, aiming around and trying to press this button at the same time, it will jitter your aim if you're using gyro aim. And it feels uncomfortable to use all the time. So in the few days I've been using this, I ended up just not using this button a lot. And I usually use these buttons all the time. So it just takes more force than necessary. And when you look at the Binbok, it's just very light press, clicks in, it's very tactile, you can probably hear it. And it's not so light that you're going to hit it accidentally, but it's just enough that it has intention whenever you click it, and it just feels good. So that's definitely a downside of the Mobapad, because I do use those rear buttons a lot. And if it's difficult to use or it's uncomfortable to use, then I'm not going to use those a lot. The other reason is the fact that programming it is kind of annoying, because you have to hold down this gear icon button for 4 or 5 seconds, and then a light turns on, and then you have to press the button that you want to map to it, and then you have to press the button on the back, and then it commits. Whereas on the old Binboks, you literally just hold this button on the back, but you could do sight unseen because you could just feel it. Press the button that you want, and then it's done. It takes a maximum of 1 second. So if you switch between games a lot, like I do, and you're in the middle of a round and you have to switch what the button does because you're using different configs or something, this is just immediate. It takes, no time at all to do it in the middle of the action. Whereas this one, the Mobapad, you just have to sit there and wait and then program your button, and it's just annoying to switch it all the time. So it might not matter to you if you don't actually switch what your back button does a lot, if you just keep the same thing all the time, but I do, so it is annoying for me. I kind of see why it is that way though, because on these Mobapad, they just have this one button that controls both the turbo functions and the macro buttons, so it's kind of a shared duty for this button, and that's why it just has this complicated nature to it. Whereas on the Binboks, they had dedicated buttons for either macro programming or turbo programming, and that's why it's just so simple. You just hold down a button, press what you want, and when you release it, it's done. And these older ones, these OG Binboks, weren't capable of macro sequences. They just did one-to-one button remaps. But even on the newer controllers and like the Binbok family, like these Doyoky Lumos, they could do macros, but they still have it as a more elegant solution because they have dedicated buttons for turbo and for macro. So you could just hold this macro button, press whatever you want, just a one button for a one-to-one remap or like a sequence, and then when you release it, it's programmed. That's it, it's done. So programming it is just way better on these than it is on the Mobapad, which is a downside of the Mobapad, and probably why I won't use these to use the back button a lot. And another thing to keep in mind if you're buying these for PC Gyro is that the Mobapad does not have a USB port on it, like the Binboks do, or pretty much every other third-party Joycon does. So if you want to charge these, you have to charge it through the slide rail. And if you do not have an actual physical switch to slide this into, you're going to have to buy a Joycon charging station. So you're going to have to get something like this, which is a Joycon charging station, and you could just slide this on and charge your Joycon that way. But if you do get one of these, try to get one like this where the rails are separated, because a lot of these charging stations are made for official Joycon, and as you can see, the profile of those is way thinner than a third-party Joycon. It's thick like this. So you want to get one where you will be able to charge both your controllers at the same time, so the rails will have to be either perpendicular or just separated. So make sure about that if you get one of those. So yeah, that's my review of the Mobapad M6 HD for PC Gyro. I hope you enjoyed it, and take it easy.